This is Orlando with Rob Coble.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to This is Orlando, special virus edition. We're actually using the Zoom app in order to record this one, and we're fortunate tonight to have somebody with us that I've been trying to get on the show for quite some time, and schedules being what they are, it's been a little bit crazy, but please join me in welcoming audio and teaching legend from Orlando, Tom Todia. How's it going, Tom?
It is going awesome, my friend. How are you doing in these crazy days?
I'm doing good, man. It's so good to finally get you here and to see you, man. We haven't caught up in a long time, man. How's things?
Things are good. You know, crazy. We've been finaling a couple games over at the studio and been doing some work on the side on a couple small projects as well. So it's been good. It's been busy, but that's how I like it.
Right on. You know, I failed in the introduction to even tell everybody your current title over at EA.
Oh, yeah. So I am currently audio director at Electronic Arts Tiburon, along with Ryan Narath, who's my counterpart audio director, and we handle all the sound that comes through there, whether it's implementing, recording, voiceover work, studio recording, you know, a little bit of everything. And I'm still a silent partner currently in my contract company that I have with Chris Latham and Engine Audio. But all of that work has kind of been put onto the side because of a non-compete.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of a bummer for you, man.
It's a trade-off, you know, like anything. And EA being a company that's been around a long time, some of the do not compete laws or rules with Activision, EA, and some are stricter than the smaller and medium studios because they've been doing it so long, back from the 90s era where people were stealing code and IP left and right. But these days, the way tools and code bases work, it's kind of an outdated idea. It doesn't really work that way anymore. Everybody knows how to code now. But in the early days, stealing engineering code was a big deal. So they just had kind of a blanket policy. But even EA is revising and lightening it up. So they'll let me work. Yeah, and they'll let me work on things that are not game related. So I can do audio, just not on a video game or a VR project.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Are you doing any music recording, or is that even not your thing? I mean, I know you're the sound guy, man. You taught me all about ambionic sound and like last time we talked and everything, and it was fascinating.
Yeah. I handle music as far as helping with licensing and implementation, but we use a lot of pop chart, you know, hip hop music and sports titles, which I work on mostly these days. So most of our songs we get from a record label, and then we have some composed music. And then there's times where I write little musical ditties for screen wipes and things like that. But for the most part, the music is off my plate as far as making it goes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So how long have you been at EA now, man? Has it been a year, 2 years?
It's coming up it'll be 3 years in October. So a little over 2.5 years. Time flies. Wow. Yeah.
Man, time just, holy smoke, man. And are you doing any teaching still at all?
No, I still on occasion go over to Full Sail. You know, it's like home away from home still. So I'll go over and do little seminars, panels, things with different classes, some of their on-air stuff. I was doing that for a while. But I've gotten really greedy with my time lately. You know, I used to have my hands involved in a million little projects, and now it's pretty much just work, family, home life, and mitigating my workload versus income as much as possible, being much more selective these days.
Well, good for you. I mean, I think it's cool that you can recognize the work-life balance, and I know you got a family that's important to you and everything. I certainly admire that. I know it's got to be a little bit tough because, you were the guy that always had your hands in something, always doing something. In fact, you helped me get this podcast off the ground. You were the original engineer that was, putting everything together for us. And I mean, certainly appreciate that and everything, but I know you have so many other things going on, man. Is it hard not to get your fingers or get your ladle in all those pots, or?
It kind of is, but you, like everyone that does audio or any kind of media production, programmers, artists, designers, all of us, to get good, you have to spend so much time doing it. You can enjoy it and want to do it, but if you're going to compete with people that actually do it for a living, you got to be really, really good. So you have to spend a lot of years working hard at the craft. And if you have a family, to get there, they put up with a lot of nonsense, a lot of hours, a lot of weekends, a lot of late nights, being gone. So it's pretty much obligatory that once you get to a place where you can scale back a little bit, you should. Because otherwise it's just a life of hysteria. I know people like that are addicted to the hours and really well past my age. They just seem to want to live at the studio, and that's who they are. I'm not like that. I totally enjoy my job. I love what I do, but if I'm having an 8-hour day at 8 hours in a minute, I'm out of the studio. I don't pull those hours anymore.
You know what? And again, I mean, I admire that. Carlos and I talk about that all the time too, because he's a family guy. I don't have kids, and yet still, it's important to me to be able to spend time with my wife. And I actually feel that makes you a better employee too. I mean, if you go in and you feel refreshed and you have a personal life that, kind of makes it all worth working for and everything, no matter how much you love doing what you do, you got to be able to get out and do your thing a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And I got really lucky because I've been contract working for EA for years before I started with them and other large studios as a third party contractor. But the era of heavy crunching for a lot of teams, I got lucky enough to miss. So since I've been there, they're actually very, very cautious with my hours and my work-life balance, and they'll pretty much kick you out of the door and if you're getting near overtime. So it's and I know they went through a lot long before I got there that kind of created this new culture. So for the people that fought for that, I should say a big thank you to them, because a lot of people they'll say, "Hey, I heard you're working at EA now." And I said, "Yeah, I've been there for a while now." I said, "Oh, I hear they really kill you with hours." I was like, "Don't tell them that, because I have not had that experience." I think they've been very considerate, really, of my time, which I appreciate a lot at this stage.
So there's a lot of good people over there too. And, I don't know if you're in a position to be able to, or if you know what's going on with the big move coming for you guys going downtown. How's that been going? Is everything on schedule, or?
Everything is on schedule. It's really exciting. I've been lucky enough to be one of the people that's working with the architecture firm. So I've been going to meetings downtown to talk about audio concerns in the building, and what they're building outside and inside is just world class. It's really exciting. I can't wait to get into the facilities and be down there.
Nice. So are you having opportunity to kind of advise then on like the booths and all the different the Foley booth and all the different sound stages and everything that you're going to be working on?
Yeah, and we're mirroring most of what we have now, and there'll be some new development as well. But part of my job is just to be there and really remind everyone that we need a professional acoustics expert and that I can guide and advise. But a problem that happens a lot in audio studios is you build rooms and then make them sound good after that. That's the way a lot of companies do it. So, but it's actually a lot less expensive if you hire the right people and do it right from the beginning, instead of trying to retrofit it with good sound already in mind when it's being built. And it takes some serious experts. They're way out of my league to come up with that math.
Well, you're selling yourself short. I'm sure you could do it, but at the same time, I think I love what you're saying there, man. It's like, might as well just do it right the first time instead of, having to go back in and, scramble to get what you want. So,
yeah. And, as in game development, and, because you've been around so many game developers, that when you're a team lead or a director of any art form on the team, one of your jobs is to make sure that the production and the producers understand what it's going to cost to do it right in the beginning versus the end. So a lot of what I do now, along with audio work, is make sure that everyone understands this is how much it's going to cost if we go path A, this is how much longer it will take and how much more expensive, and then prove that out so we funnel money in the right direction. And that's kind of a new avenue for me, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, right on, man.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of times when we talk to game developers of any sort, they're kind of tongue-tied a little bit as to what they're allowed to talk about. But so I know you might not be able to really give us an idea on specifically what you're working on, but can you give us a little sense of what a typical day for an audio director for a major game studio looks like?
Sure. Yeah. It's a lot of meetings. A lot of meetings, some of them necessary, some not so much, but a lot of meetings, and which is important. At first, you kind of detest the amount of meetings. It seems silly because as a designer or an artist or a programmer, and you're used to hitting tasks and deadlines, everything that interrupts you, you just can't stand it. So once you get into that position, now your whole job is kind of slowing things down and doing it by the book. And so at first, meetings seemed a little obnoxious to me. And then when you see that they start solving a lot of problems before they happen in good communication, you realize that they're actually really important. So I'll have 3 or 4 meetings every day, either with our team or then speaking to our development partners in animation, in art, synchronizing information. We do a light kind of scrum system at EA, so we have stand-ups on a regular basis, and then also doing audio work, implementing in the engine, recording, editing, sound design, doing some post-production work. That one of the better things about a director position is that you get to somewhat control the work that you do. Because I can't make the game on my own; it's too much. But at my spot, I get to sort of pick out the things that I find interesting and say, well, those are mine. I'm doing those, and then delegate the rest of it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
That's something I learned from Pete Cooper a long time ago at Blizzard when he came to do some talks at Full Sail. One of the things that he said as the art director out there was that people would come in new to the team and say, "This is awesome. I'm at Blizzard. I can't wait to make the next dragon." And the art director would say, "Yeah, that's me. I'll make the dragon. You're going to make the boxes and the sconces and the bricks on the wall. Sure. And if one day you get in charge, you get to make the dragon. But that's my gig." So that's kind of the fun part of directing.
Well, you got to be able to have some fun too. I mean, if all you're doing is going out there and kind of directing and not really doing your craft and whatnot, I mean, you've got that itch that you've got to scratch too,
Yeah, and I will say also for the different teams that I've worked with in the past, Tiburon has a really great culture there, definitely on the audio team that I work with, where everybody there is really talented, but everybody has specifics that they're more experienced at. And even though we have our specific jobs, if people excel at something and they want to do it, we kind of give everybody the opportunity to do what they're good at. And there's a strong camaraderie there, so nobody really gets upset by anyone else jumping in, which is good. And it's stock full of Full Sail people. I mean, like a majority of our team are Full Sail grads. And some of them handpicked former students that I remember.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and it's so different because I don't know if you've seen the last project that Chris and I worked on that's out there now, which should be coming out soon, is that Maneater game, the shark game, and that's releasing next month. But when we were doing that project, we were a team of 6 people. Now there's 700 in the building that I'm in. So going from a small team to a huge team has pros and cons to it, but I think more pros than cons.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just a matter of getting used to it. I mean, a lot of times when I'm talking to students, they're not really sure what it is that they want. The bigger the team, you tend to be a little bit more of a specialist, and the smaller the team, maybe you get a chance to wear a lot more hats. Director, of course, you get to try on all the hats at one point or another. And so, dude, we had an opportunity to work a lot back together at Full Sail, and I always I always loved your teaching style, and we sat and shared stories and stuff like that. And I gotta believe that there's a certain part of you that really misses getting in front of the classroom and talking about this stuff.
There is. I don't like to admit it. I don't really talk about it because I absolutely adore what I'm doing. I love my job, and I love the team, and the people I work with every day are incredible friends at this point. But I was just at Full Sail for the Hall of Fame for the induction because Mark Kilborn got inducted, and Sean McCabe and Aaron, a few friends. So I went and saw that. While I was there, I had the itch. I wanted to do panels or something. And I have to remind my team all the time that I'm not a teacher anymore. So if I start acting too much like one, just let me know. If I pull up the whiteboard and start lecturing, you feel free to leave. It just happens by default.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, it's kind of fun, man. And I think that there's something about teachers where it is intrinsically built into them, where anytime you can help somebody else, or when you see that light bulb go out and, you're explaining something and all of a sudden you see that student have that aha moment or something like that. It's just a brilliant thing.
Yeah. And I miss those little moments because when you're working with people at Tiburon or a large studio like that, almost everybody there is an expert at what they do. There's no newbies, really. Even the people at the beginning of the ladder there are really, really smart, clever, accomplished people. But as a teacher, doing lecturers, as an advisor, any of that kind of role, when you make an impact on somebody and you see it had an actual significant difference, it's kind of cliche to say, oh, I made a difference. But it's true. It feels really, really good. And I had someone in the Hall of Fame while I was there say that they changed their whole career path when they came through my course. And they've been very successful. I said, that's awfully nice. You don't have to say that. I'm sure there were a lot of people. He said, yeah, all the teachers were great, but our stories connected. When I got into audio, it was because of music, 100%. And just like most of us that do sound, when I was a kid, I was so in love with music, to the point that it had such an impact on your life. It was there when you were heartbroken, when you're happy. And as a teenager, I remember thinking, how can something that's basically invisible have that much emotional impact on so many people?
Yeah, right.
Why can a beautiful major chord make a room full of strangers feel happy with no prior learning of what that means? And yet somehow it universally feels the same way to almost everybody. I was always fascinated by that. But then once I started working in music production and recording studios and saw what that lifestyle was like, after a while, it just wasn't the thing for me. And I spoke to someone who was doing post-production and said, you can take your love of sound. It doesn't have to be just music. People have to make commercials and movies and video games and do weddings. There's a million outlets for people that are interested in sound. And then the doors sort of opened up after that. So I would always tell students that. I was like, I know probably why you came here. It's probably why I came here, to be in the room with the great musicians that you love and be part of it, even if no one ever knows who you are. I totally feel that. But it's not the 70s and 80s and 90s anymore. If you're really good at what you do, and you can put a small studio together at home, these days you can make money a lot of different ways. Unlike the old days where there was one path as an apprentice, like Mickey's Apprentice underneath a wizard of audio.
Yeah,
and
right.
They just had to train you and you had to wait for them to give you some scraps to get in. That was the only way in. And now I know lots of people that are successful that just bypassed the whole apprenticeship world and just started their own thing, and they're doing great with it. And it's an exciting time for audio production.
Yeah, when you have Grammy-winning albums being done in teenagers' bedrooms and stuff like that, it's amazing what you can do. So, I've lately been. The music bug hit me hard again, my career, I started in music and did that for many years. And,
right.
Once I kind of got away from it, it's like I'm still a fan and everything, but I wasn't quite as active as I've become again lately, actually getting out there and pursuing it. And we've had a lot of talks with some people here in different bands and other people involved in the local scene and everything, trying to figure it all out. We do have a good scene here, and
yeah, we do.
It's not, I still think we need to have that cohesive center point excuse me, that really brings it all together, and people know where to go to be educated on it and everything. From your perspective, and not even so much on the music side, but from your perspective, if there are people that are audio engineers for, games or music or sound designers or whatnot, what sorts of organizations or meetups or things are happening here in Central Florida that they should get involved with?
Oh yeah, well, and you probably know more about it than I do, but obviously there's the Indie Nomicon, and Canal, and everything that they're doing is amazing. All the game jams. Ryan Stunkel from Blip Sounds and a couple people have started up a once a month game audio meetup, which is basically just going, having drinks downtown and hanging out and networking. So there's a lot happening in this town with music, with game production, with simulation. The indie game scene here is incredible. There's just an overflow of talented people and energy. Connecting them all together is kind of the thing that needs to happen, right? And which is down your avenue. When I talk to people at Full Sail, because now that the game that my partner Chris and I worked on is really picking up a lot of steam. It's like one of the most anticipated games, and we never imagined it would blow up to the point it is. But something that I used to talk to friends at Full Sail and students about all the time is that when you're new or you're near the beginning of your career, you just have to put in so much time and energy to your craft. I mean, you have to do it 7 days a week. You have to stay up all night. You have to really push hard. But these days, there's so many little teams of really talented people making very small. Oh, goodness sake. Sorry about that. I thought I muted that.
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. Do you remember your thought?
I totally do. Yeah. So, considering how much time and effort you have to put in the beginning of your career to get good, to get really qualified and be ready for money, people hit that catch-22 where they think to themselves, I need to prove that I'm worthy of being on a project with money. So I have to be really good, but I can't get on a project to get really good at it. And there's this kind of catch-22 where in the beginning, it seems like no one's ever going to hire you. There's just totally out of your realm. There's some magic secret and no one's going to share the secret with you of what it is. And if you keep pursuing it and keep doing it and keep networking, it starts to happen slowly. And then eventually you look back and think, I remember when I thought this was never going to happen. There's no way. When I started doing game audio work or learning it at home, like a lot of people I know at the time, we were just playing around with mod PC games for free and sharing them and seeing what we could do. But then that kind of indie game thing blew up to where people realized you could make money in indie games. You could make a living and do it. It is possible. And then it became really possible. And so what I used to tell people is what I did. Just went online, found games that people were working on that they clearly didn't have a good audio team or couldn't afford a good audio team, and talk to them and work something out with them, and if nothing happens, you still practiced, which you have to keep doing. And you got better at it. And the next time you'll be even more prepared. And, most of what we do is brute force. It's not being insanely clever. It's just doing it over and over and over again until it becomes second nature and you can synthesize solutions quickly. So if you find a great game developer programmer making a small game, they can't afford an audio person. Okay, well, you're an audio person and you're not being hired right now anyway. Go and talk to those people and let them know you can improve their game and the sound or the art or whatever it is that you do. And, they have a game. So ask for a percentage of it. Nothing is free. If the game doesn't make any money, we don't make any money, but we learned and networked and maybe the next one will. If it does make some money, well, you didn't have to pay me up front. You just pay me a percentage of some back end money, and that's what everybody should be doing these days, because, you can be really good at what you do, but if you're at home alone and nobody knows who you are, it doesn't really matter how good you are at what you do. So you've got to network and start working with people and, take a little bite-sized chunk out of what they're doing and work your butt off for them And before you know it, you could hit the lottery with one of those games.
Well, and the very worst thing that happens is you gain that experience, which is going to make you that much more marketable in the job field.
Oh, yeah.
Say that you have a few completed projects.
And it works on many levels. It works on many levels because now that I do a lot of interviews at EA, so we'll send out for interviews and I'll interview maybe a dozen people for every spot. That thing that happens in interviews that's really hard to teach is an air of confidence without some weird ego. It's like somewhere in between those two things. So when I talk to people now and they come and sit in the room and, maybe they're overwhelmed, they're nervous, everybody wants the interview to go well. But you can see right away people who have a lack of confidence because they just haven't done this enough to where they feel comfortable with it yet. And they know they're out of their realm. So if you do 3 or 4 little projects before you get to that interview and you finish them and did everything you could, you can almost sense it in people. They feel like they belong and they're supposed to be there. And that's very reassuring to us that you don't look like a deer in the headlights and you look like you've done this and you love it and you want more of it. That's a difficult thing to teach. And I know I've interviewed people that probably would have been great, but you've got 20 minutes to talk to them. And it's like, I don't get the sense that you're quite ready for this. So those little projects will get you ready and make you feel comfortable. If you go to a large studio, it's important.
That last bit that you just said, I'm going to have to cut out and use as a soundbite. Part of what I do right now in some of the coaching that I do is listen to students give me their pitch. And one of the things is, you and I have talked about this before. I think that, a good way to carry yourself in any kind of interview situation is equal parts confidence and humility. You're confident, not that you know everything, but confident that you can find the answer. And that might mean you have to ask questions. That might mean you have to research, whatever. But you feel confident. You got this, But you also need to be humble enough to know that there's a lot that you can learn. But
oh, yeah.
The millions of times I've talked to recruiters and hiring managers and asked them what is the number one, you'll get this, what is the number one attribute that they look for in a programmer? What is the number one attribute they look for in an artist? What is the number one attribute they look for in a project manager? No matter what job title you put in there, there's one answer that fits it all.
Right.
Passion. You know, that's what they want is that passion. And,
and I think people use that term enough that some people believe it's just like a cliche. It's just something you say. And I don't think they understand how real that is. Because you're right. That is the most, if you can get that sense that you're sitting in a room with somebody who's just like you, they're just not quite at that spot yet. You tend to want them there. It's like, oh, you're one of us. Come on in here. We need you. You enjoy doing this as much as we do. And you're right. The humility and confidence together is important because you want to get the sense that somebody's ready for this and mature enough for it, but also that they know no matter how much they've done, they're probably talking to people that are much farther along than they are. So I think some people have a difficult time wrestling with, I'm going to be energetic and passionate and confident and not look like an egomaniac, because those can cross quickly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just are uncomfortable talking about themselves. I always say, just speak in fact. If you did this, you did it. That's not bragging. You did it. You don't have to. You don't have to be a total tool about it, but it's like. Yeah,
I recently had an interviewee that came in, and he was a Full Sail grad, absolutely great guy, and he brought me his demo, wanted me to show me the demo, and he was so humble that he felt like it wasn't even worth really talking about. And I had to pause him while we were going through it. I said, look, you used a game engine and you built this little demo. He said, right. I said, and I went through the steps of what I knew he had to do to get this done and get it ready. He said, right. And I said, now you're nervous. It's not up to the quality level. So I can see that in you. But what we do here on a daily basis, you did in that demo. That wouldn't be done if you didn't do it. It's not at the same scale. It's not at the same time and devotion, but you're already proving that you've done what we do. And you should have a little confidence in that. Like, I've seen what this is. I love it. I want to be one of you guys. Here's what I know and what I've done. Would you like to talk about it? That kind of openness and passion is key in an interview.
Yeah, again, and doing those things is on your own is often the same experience you would get if they were doing it under your roof. It's like you're doing the same things, maybe just not on the same scale or whatnot. So
yeah, and one of the differences there would be that down the hall there's 7 or 8 experts that each know a lot about what you're stuck on. So unlike when I'm working at home, I can just go next door and start picking other people's brains, and there's a shared amount of information that you can't get at home on your own. So when people show a small project, they say, well, it's very small, I didn't do too much. I'm like, I know how much work it took to do that, and you didn't have this team of wizards around you to help you get unstuck. I get stuck all the time. Yeah. I have to ask people that are contractors on my team for help if they know something more than I do. But at my age, I don't take that as a knock, where some people will be surprised, like, you want my help? I'm like, if you know the answer to this, I want your help. If you think I feel less than adequate because I'm asking for help, there's a big age difference between us then. So I have no problem seeking out help from anybody that has it, and it doesn't diminish me in any way. So that's the thing that takes a few years for people to get into in the work field.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about websites and sound portfolios, but first, you made me think a little bit. Programming in most cases, and especially in game development, say, is very much a team sport. There is a lot of collaboration. Are you finding that same thing on the audio side?
Oh yeah. There's so many moving pieces, and there's so much work to do, and some of the work that we do you'll start it now and it's going to be 3 months before it's finished. And there's a lot of moving parts and other teams, and it's extremely interwoven. There are a few people that are so highly specialized and they're such wizards. You don't see them too much because they're always face down in it. But for the most part, it's an extremely collaborative environment. And we have to share workload and scope all the time.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that goes to being able to, on your journey, to continue learning. If you're not continuing to learn as you're going forward, you're going to get bored really fast, I think, Oh,
yeah. And I think most digital artist people, from programmers that do pure code to graphic artists, audio people, everybody, we all have a tendency to be very information hungry. Almost like OCD, and not even just to become better. It's like we have to learn new things or you get bored like a shark that isn't moving. You'll just die.
Yeah. So actually, it's been a good year, maybe 2 years now. Your former head of recruiting, Alan Ashby, came on our show and talked a lot about the interview process. And a lot of what he said was, when, and you've certainly amplified or really lent credence to what he said by, you're not expected to necessarily know every answer. When you're sitting down, like, if a new audio guy comes in, you're going to have a sense of if they know what they're doing or not. You're not expecting them to come in and out audio you,
No.
But you're expecting them to come in and at least have some justification for the decisions that they make, and to be able to talk about the process and all that kind of stuff. So with programmers, people are handing over, maybe like a link to their GitHub page. You can get a sense of if my programming is clean, well documented, all of that kind of stuff. How important are portfolios for you versus the soft skills that go with being a part of the team? I know they're both important, but what are you looking for there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It has a lot to do with the context of the position as well. So if it's an entry-level position, a starting temporary contractor up to a senior level designer, audio designer, there's different stages of it where it matters more. If it's an entry-level spot, I'm not actually that worried about a portfolio. I would like to see a portfolio, But more so, I would like to see a portfolio to make sure that the person I'm interviewing is passionate about what they do. Because this used to happen with students all the time. Student would come into the class on the first day, and they knew in their head they should come up and talk to me and say, "This is my topic." Even if it maybe wasn't, it's just like a natural networking thing that people would do. And we would have that conversation with students all the time where I would say, I would ask people, what have you worked on this week related to this topic? And people who didn't put up their hands, I'd say, well, you can't claim to be passionate about this. Passionate people, we do it all the time to where our loved ones want us to not do it so much. Like we're just overloaded with it. And that's the pace you have to run at right now. So when people come into an interview, whether it's a portfolio or not of sound, I like to see that they're working on something and trying stuff, even if it's a failure, even if it didn't work out, because we can talk about what went wrong. And God knows I fail on things all the time, always have, but you learn from those. And I almost like to see someone show me something and say, this is why this is not up to speed. This is why I wish it was different. And in that, I think, you know what? I agree. You're right. That's what should be different. That means you know how to think about this. You know how to analyze your own work. If it's a senior sound designer, that's different, because a senior level person, or even somewhere in between junior and senior, we expect you to hit the ground running and be able to handle our tools pretty much right out of the box and start contributing. So in that case, we want to see a portfolio. The difficult thing with us is a lot of people don't get the idea that a portfolio should be extremely focused to the studio and the team that you're going to. So, other friends of mine that do audio at other studios, Sony and Activision, we all kind of laugh about this when we talk. But people will send me a demo, remaking like Call of Duty. I'm like, hey, that sounds cool. I make football and basketball and hockey games, so this has no bearing whatsoever. And it also makes me think you're the kind of person that doesn't do their homework. And you put a lot of time and effort into this, and it wouldn't mean anything to someone like me other than maybe good job, good for you. That's not what we do here. So sometimes I've seen demos where I've told them it'd be better not to show me this demo, because honestly, there's no connection between it and what we do. Not everybody's like that. Some directors disagree. I would prefer somebody send me something directly related to what we do to show me you've already spent some time thinking about this, wrapping your head around it a little bit, or just go to Call of Duty. I'm sure they have a spot they need somebody for too. So on demos, they're not absolutely important. But what is important for anybody who's working on a demo is it has to be the absolute highest quality thing you think you're capable of right now. And the quality is more important to me than the quantity. Because the demo isn't really to prove to me that you can do everything. It's to prove to me that you have quality control and you're happy with this, turning it over. That's usually what I like about demos. So I've told people I'd rather see a 20-second demo that's amazing than 5 minutes of demo that's just, yeah, you did it. It's not that great. Short and sweet is better.
Oh man, I'm sitting here talking. I realized I had my mic muted. Quality over quantity for sure.
Yeah, and there's a mindset there. When students used to ask, but also people come in, I said, look, this is a chance for me you to show me what you think amazing sounds like and behaves like and is designed like. And if you can do this from home, well, then you can do this here. You know what quality is. We're going to give you your own room and a staff and support and answers. So we'll help you get there. But if you do this much at low quality, I don't know if you're right for the team, because I wouldn't have shown that to anybody,
Yeah. Oh boy. So, well, man, dude, man, it's like, there's so much going on here. And I feel like I keep like going all over the place here. I'm glad we're getting a chance to kind of like talk to the newcomer, to the student that's out there and everything. I think this stuff is really important. But what has got you excited right now in the world of audio? And tell me if I'm saying this right. It was the ambisonic mics that you were telling me about last time that I had never really knew what that was, but it's basically 360 sound, that you're able to record and everything. What, if anything, is out there now? Are there any new toys that you love or anything like that?
Yeah, there's always new stuff going on. One of the most exciting things right now for me is the AI speech generation. So there's a number of companies working on some really sophisticated algorithms, which the public is nervous about. But for my world, it's actually great.
First off, why is the public nervous?
Because I've heard some of these algorithms now from companies that haven't released the product yet. So it's all behind closed doors. But I can take a couple sentences of your voice and have the algorithm learn it and train it and basically recreate a digital version of your voice and tell it what to say. And it will say it, and it will sound very, very, very much like you.
Okay, that is super freaky, man.
And it's already done, and it's already working. The problem with most of it is that it works in short bursts. But the problem is humans are so unique in the way that we talk, where we pause, where we add inflections, how we make something sound like a question versus a statement. Those things are actually very complicated. So the voice can sound like you, and you could say, "Oh, hi there," and it will sound like you. But if you said, "Hey, how are you doing?" it doesn't do the phonetics on the questioning quite right. And that's where it sounds, that's where it kind of falls apart, but it's pretty close, man. It won't be long before you will have to question just about anything that you hear that sounds like someone's voice. Because at that level, even looking at it under a microscope, it's so close of a clone, it would be hard for a forensic expert to say that's not you.
Wow.
But for us, it's great because I do sports titles and we have a lot of commentators and VO and things going on all the time. And we have to have the name of every quarterback and every possible possession and just millions and millions of things going on. So the idea that one day maybe I could hire a sports broadcaster and pay them for the licensing to their voice, and then they let us take it from them and generate our own library, and we still pay them. They just don't have to come into the studio all the time.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be happening. Voiceover actors are going to start selling a 1-year chunk of rights to their basically sound, and you get to borrow it from them for a while.
Wow. So you've seen some of those deep fake videos that have been around, right? So that's basically what you're saying with audio. Now, would people be able to emulate, take Robert Plant singing and emulate that on a record, or is that still a ways away?
That's still a ways away. Like I said, anything that gets unique and artistic beyond just simple kind of robotic talking is still not all that great. So something as artistic as singing and the inflection in a vocalist, that's a pretty far off. Yeah. Because you don't know exactly what, it would be easier to copy something exactly than it would be to make it sound like Robert Plant is singing anything new. But even that would be very complicated.
Yeah. And there's already enough studio trickery going on to make people sound like they halfway know what they're doing anyway. So
yeah, people love hearing very average sounding singers overly processed, and they love the sound of it, and it's top 10 now. So it's kind of a strange time where all of the pop music actually, some of it is dominated by people that are not that great of a singer. It's that kind of an era.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone's new favorite artists. I'm not saying everybody, but
I always made a promise that I was never going to turn into my dad. And here I am. It's like I literally spend most days close to my computer, which means I have Spotify up. If I'm not listening to an album, I'm going through Spotify and trying to find something new and reading all these reviews. And I'm just hard pressed to find anything that speaks to me. So I guess that there really is that generational sound, that thing that you grew up with that really spoke to you is ingrained so deeply in me that listening to this new stuff just,
Look, if you grew up listening to Hendrix play the guitar, if you grew up listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash do harmonies, if you grew up listening to, Johnny Cash put dark soul into country, it's tough to find stuff in the great thing about Spotify for me, and just like the internet for people that are younger, I remember when the internet got started, and the idea that instead of going to a record store or the radio, I could listen to a rock band from like the Congo and just find these things that were never on my plate. I love that about Spotify, for instance. Lately, I don't even listen to my favorite playlist. I just go down a wormhole and let it make the suggestions, and all of a sudden I'm like, what is this? This is made in Lithuania. This is amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting stuff off the radar these days.
Yeah, and that is one of the cool things about it. Being able to take advantage of their machine learning and patterns for the things that you like. I have discovered some good bands there, and my wife and I were supposed to take a trip to. You'll remember the Manchester scene of the late '80s.
Oh yeah,
we were going to go to Manchester and then Edinburgh, Scotland. It looks like that's probably on hold right now. But so for me, my visit to that city was to absorb everything I could about their music history and culture. So I've been going back and like dusting off these old Smiths records and pulling out Happy Mondays records and listening to Oasis and,
right. Yeah.
kind of stuff. And that's been kind of fun. But then I'll start hearing about these new bands that are coming out of there. And there's a couple that are pretty cool, but a lot of it just sounds the same. This whole alternative rock thing, man, we need you to create a new genre, dude. Can you get on that and start making something really cool?
Yeah, please. And share it with us.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah.
So what's coming up next for you, man? I mean, while we're on the topic of music, before we move on, is there anything right now that you're listening to that's just like really getting you excited? Or
there's a lot. I'm really into sort of rainy day indie electronica music. That's one of my things lately, like non-vocals. So, there's like this artist, Tycho, that's been around for a while that I just adore. And there's a lot of groups like that. He's coming to the Hard Rock next month. Well, maybe not. We'll see.
Not now, yeah, but
I have tickets, but we might not be going. But I've always been into electronic music and classic rock, especially. But I know that's like a big jump. It's like I love classic rock. I grew up listening to punk rock and hip hop in the 80s and early 90s, and then since then I've been really into electronic music, not dancey electronic music. The kind of stuff you'd put on a nice long drive. And those were very hard to find. When I was younger, that kind of music was almost impossible to find. But now, because of YouTube and Spotify and everything else, it's just so easy to find new things, shuffle through them, add a like. But it's weird too, because I still grew up in the era where we listened to the radio and we just listened to cassettes and LPs. And because of that era, everyone that I knew sort of knew all the lyrics to the same songs.
Right.
So everyone I knew growing up listened to, obviously Dark Side of the Moon and Houses of the Holy and Hendrix and so many just great, great artists. And everybody knew every single moment of it. These days, most of the time when you play somebody a song, it's probably something they've heard for the first time.
Yeah.
So there's not that common connection where everybody can hear and just kind of hum along right away. Yeah, I noticed that era is kind of gone.
Yeah, there's so much stuff out there, and I think the key is to find somebody that whose opinions or whose tastes are somewhat similar to yours.
Right.
I always, I have a few friends. We listen to a lot of the same things. Those are the guys that I'm going to listen to. If somebody just comes up to me and goes, "This is the best record ever," my ears will perk up a little bit, but then I'm kind of like, all right, who is this guy? What does he listen to? Let me look at his record collection before I decide.
Right.
So, it's just what it is. So dude, what's next for you, man? I mean, things are going great at EA. I think we're going to probably see you there for a while.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be with EA for the long haul. We'll see. I'm enjoying it there a lot. There's part of me that still is interested in going back to doing independent freelance work 100%. But the thing about freelance work is it can be amazing and it can be terrible all in the same week.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely more into the constant these days and not worrying about having to find a client all the time and staying up with that client. So that's pretty much it. I've been thinking about writing a book, but there's a lot of books on the topic out there, and my topic changes so fast, and it absorbs and new information and new technology and new tools that by the time you write something and put it out, unless it's sort of a high level design concept, it's kind of outdated almost immediately. So we'll see, doing some recording for sound libraries. I've always wanted to do that, and now is a good chance. I'm here for a few weeks now, so I've got the recorder. This is a good time to go record stuff.
Yeah, how has it been for you, being that you work in such a collaborative environment? I'm assuming you're working out of the house now, right?
Yeah. And it would probably be a lot bumpier if we didn't have the most amazing IT team in the world. I mean, they had us ready to go when the decision was made that everybody was working from home so fast. And, there's 700 developers in our building and probably 8 people in IT. And they managed to get us all encrypted and VPN'd and out of the building in a day.
Wow.
And we have Slack channels where they can basically solve almost any problem I can come up with. If anything, I should write a book to how important your IT team is, and they don't get recognized enough because they keep everything running when I'm out of answers.
Yeah. So it really has been a pretty seamless transition then, you being able to get what you need and get in touch with everybody. And still, I guess the majority of the work that you do, if you're not recording, you're doing it on your computer, right? So,
oh yeah. Yeah. Pretty much our world is easy to move. Some of us had to bring our machines home. Other people could just use a virtual network and log into their computer from home. But yeah, the IT team over there has it set up like an absolute machine.
That's awesome, man. That's going to make it a lot sweeter when it does come time to move too. Cause that's always like a big pain and whatnot. Hey, if I could make a suggestion to you, if you really, really want to write a book, and you would do with the stories that you have from all your years of teaching, the advice that you have to offer upcoming students, it doesn't even have to be of a technical nature, man. You would write an awesome breaking into the industry kind of book or something. And if you ever get serious about that, let me know, man, because I would love to get involved with that, because I remember one of the times that we met, and I wish I could remember this story. You told me this great story of how you coached a student once, and I totally forgot what you had told me, but I wish that I could turn back time, because it was just like, oh my God, that is just brilliant. So that's where you need to go, man. I think
that's a good idea for a book, actually. When you said, I thought, because that sounds like a book that I would like to have read.
Yeah,
because it's as much, and this as well. It's as much coaching people into the right mindset as it is making them think there's some specific set of things they have to learn in order to be considered good or worthy. It's more of a mindset, and when I was growing up, my mom was very into self-help books. So I had, Tony Robbins and Who Moved My Cheese and all of those types of things. And I didn't appreciate them till I got older, but it's like the Celestine Prophecy, The Secret, they're all basically saying the same thing. And it's true. You tell the universe what you want spiritually. Just let it know. I want to be a game audio person. That's who I am. That's what I'm going to do. And you believe it. So you tell the universe what you want, and then you work really hard every day to get there and have no expectations of when or how it's going to arrive. And all of a sudden it does. It's when you put those constraints around it. This is what I'm going to do. 1 year from now, I'm going to have my Mercedes. 2 years, when you start like over planning, you're like, oh, no. You have to let go of all of that and just give into it and do it and don't quit. And then one day someone's going to ask you how you got where you're going to have a hard time explaining it because you didn't think of it that way. Like, I don't know. I guess the simplest answer usually is when people ask how you got to where you are, it's like, well, I didn't quit.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty much it. I did it. You haven't seen years and years and years of work and struggle. But if there is any one answer, it's that, do it and don't quit. That's the
Yeah,
only
man.
road.
I agree, man. If you want it bad enough, go out, keep going. You never, don't quit when you never know that big break might have been coming up the next day, and,
Yeah.
you walked away from it. So, you're right. People do talk a lot about passion, and a lot of times it can get to kind of sound a little cliche and everything. But I've mentioned this before on the show, but my friend Steve Derrick, when we would talk about networking, he would always say, do it because you're passionate about it, and this is what you love, not because you're looking for a job, and
Yeah.
and that's just so true. I think.
Oh, yeah. There are easier ways to make a living than being
Yeah.
in game and media development. If you don't actually love it and don't want to be one of these nerds and hang out with them and be like them and be one of them, I can't imagine why you would go into it. You could be a banker, or a lawyer. There's easier ways to make money. But if you are one of us, make sure we see that, because that's what we're attracted to, is other people that are like us. We want other people around that are going to have new ideas because they are really into this. They go home and think about it. They come back in and, want to talk about it, absorb it. And those are the people you want around.
Rob Cato used to talk about that a lot in the behind the scenes tour. He'd always bring up, playing games and making games are two different things. If you just want to play games for the rest of your life, you could be a lawyer and play games. You could be a doctor and play games. You could be a construction worker and play games. But you got to have that right mindset to make games. So.
Oh yeah, I would tell students this all the time: is if you used to do studio work, why did you get into game work? And I was like, I dabbled in it a little bit, and it was the most complicated thing I'd ever done in audio for me. And my ego, the positive side of my ego wanted to do that. It's like, to me, it was like special forces of audio. And even if it wasn't exciting to anyone else, I had to be one of those people, because man, was it the hardest thing I'd ever done. And just being able to pat yourself on the back and say, you're doing something that's very complicated. That doesn't matter to everybody, but it did to me. And I have a passion for that when I'm around other people that want to do the very high level thing. Even if it's really complicated and takes weeks to finish something, and it's like solving a Rubik's Cube every single day. But I enjoy the amount of puzzle solving that has to be done, as opposed to what I used to do in audio. Every day is a complete puzzle that it just comes out of left field.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Even though you're kind of doing the same thing, you're doing it differently each day. And for me, working with music, it was that way. It was pretty much the same thing, but each record that you were trying to market would offer its own challenges, and it just kept it fresh. So man, I want to be respectful of your time, because we've been going for about an hour here. Is there anything that you want to add here at the end to people out there listening, or any sage words of wisdom or anything at all, man?
I don't know if I have any sage wisdom, but I would say the common bond between everyone that I know that got out of school and is working in their field and working hard is that you have to think about the whole plate. You have to think about communicating with people. People have to know who you are, have an inquisitive mind, work really hard, and just get yourself into the game. Find a way in, talk to people, interview, go online and chat with people, collaborate with people. It's our industry is so much bigger and expansive and constantly growing than I think a lot of people realize. That it's really easy in the beginning of your career to sit at home or in your apartment with your computer and nothing's happening yet, and think this isn't the right field for me. Yeah. And if you can just hang on, it's just like kids. My kids are both musicians, and the first year you force them to take a music lesson. And then the second year they're kind of into it. And then around the fourth or fifth year, they start to lose interest in it. And if you can just get them past that fifth or sixth year, they become in love with it, and it takes off, and it's like, that's one thing that I would just suggest to people, is that if you're wondering how your first gig is going to show up, network, study, practice, work with people, have a good attitude, and just keep moving forward. Before you know it, You'll get your first paid gig, and it won't be much, but it'll be really exciting to get money. And then the next one will be a little bit bigger. And before you know it, things are really taking off to where they should go. You just have to have, it's like investing in the stock market. You don't make money quickly. This is a long-term, long game, long goal. So don't think of it in terms of what happens next week. It's how am I going to get through the next 5-10 years? Got to have a long-term plan.
Right on, man. Such great advice, man. Tom, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's good to catch up with you a little.
Oh, always. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, hopefully next time we can do it face-to-face and over some food and maybe even an adult beverage and a cigar or something like that, But
you got me there. We won't even need hand sanitizer. It'd be great.
Yeah, I know those, those music guys. You gotta just, working in the music business for as long as I did, people see that on your resume and immediately assume you're a heroin addict or something like that. So
yes, and sometimes they're wrong. Yeah,
it doesn't work that way. So, but yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll be keeping an eye on you as you make the move and as things go on. We'd love to have you back on some other time.
Would love to. I just realized now I'm looking up at my video, which I haven't been looking up at. I got a little bit of a sunburn today, and all the lights went out except this red light. So it looks like I'm in a demon room.
Yeah,
or something.
You do kind of have
got a red
that.
glow.
You don't have the flames coming out your eyes or anything, so that part's good. So,
well, that was not on purpose. Yeah.
I think this is perfect, and we're probably going to try and post the video here too for anybody that does want to watch it online. But we've never really done that in the past, so we're going to play around with it and see what happens. Thankfully, we have Carlos who's going to be tweaking the sound and all of that on here, and
it's in good hands.
He is so much pickier than I am. We did a little recording earlier today, and he was talking about the importance of having a backup. And one of the podcasts we did, and I don't even remember which one it was now, but he ended up having to splice half the podcast, the remainder of the podcast from the backup recording device. And he was like, I want you to listen to that, and you tell me if you can find out where I did it. And I'm like, no. So yeah, he's pretty good too. So,
that does not surprise me.
Yeah. So anyway, hey, for those of you listening or watching, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, new band suggestions are always welcome, or you can just feel free to send donations to This Is Orlando. You can find me at robcoble.org. That's ROBCOBLE. Or if you want to email me directly, it's rwcoble@gmail.com. And keep an eye out for Tom. He's out there on social media. And if there's any events that are happening in town, you're most likely will find him at the Digital Orlandos, the different meetups and whatnot. Make sure you stop and say hello to him, because he is super good guy, and he's got a lot of great advice to give. He loves meeting people. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. It's a great talk.